Serious, military or police service members of Reddit, what are the most spooky unexplainable things to have happened to you in your career? My first assignment was to good ole Usagi Yongsan in Korea. It was originally an Imperial Japanese Army base, back when the Japanese were barging their way through the Korean peninsula. If I recall correctly, the 8th Army HQ still had an Imperial chrysanthemum on it somewhere. But anyways, on one of the less well-traveled corners of the base, sat what I think was a storage building for the hospital or something. Anyways, this building had huge tall walls surrounding it, and used to be some kind of special hospital when the Japanese were there. All kinds of stories about staff duty officers coming by to do checks and running into spooky crap. Me personally, I was pulling overnight guard in the United Nations Command HQ on Yongsan. About 3-4 years prior, one of our NCO's, non-commissioned officers, had come up to the guard, asked for his weapon, and taken it to the gazebo out back and shot himself in the dome piece. So anyways, the building has automatic front door and cameras watching the outside of the door. My friend and I see a dark shadowy figure coming up the ramp to the door at about 2 AM and we're like, probably the SOG, sergeant of the guard. Frick. So I step out of the guard post to brief him, and my buddy stays inside watching the camera. The automatic doors open, both the inside and outside ones, and there's nobody there. So in my mind I'm thinking, great, the SOG is trying to mess with us. So I pop outside the building and look around a bit, but there's nobody there. So I went back inside and asked my friend where the dude went, and he gave me a stupid look and told me that he watched him enter the building. We discussed what had happened, and came to the conclusion that it was the ghost of that NCO doing some phantom SOG rounds, and I refused to pull night shift in that building ever again. While I was stationed in Cherry Point, I had the duty of inspecting the Marines barracks on Thursday morning after field day. Most rooms were normal. Dust bunnies here, scum stain there, but one day I stumbled across something disturbing. I went through one Marine's room. He was a heavy cat, and I noticed his wall locker was unlocked. Whenever I see unlocked wall lockers, I would go through them just for kicks. Well, this devil had somehow accumulated about 20 pairs of women's underwear. Some were even marked. When confronted, SNM stated, "It's not a crime to have women's thongs. Turns out, it is when you steal it from the laundry room." This is definitely the one that made my stomach turn. So, on watch one night me and my buddy were joking around. We were given strict orders not to go beyond the ECP, for any reason. Seems fair. Well, about 20 minutes into the watch we both start shivering despite it being a warm and humid night. Maybe another 15 minutes and we hear a blood-curdling scream from the woods about 10 yards from the post. I'm talking, it sounded like a woman was being stabbed, over and over again. It was at least 10 seconds of straight screaming. When morning came around, we asked, and we were told no one was out and no one was supposed to be in the area except for our guys. Dunno about the cold, but a mountain lion sounds exactly like a woman screaming. Google that crap, bro. A building way out on the north side of our base was abandoned. Water leaked in and caused mold or whatnot to grow. The kind that would get in your lungs and make you very sick. So no one had been working in this building for decades. All the office furniture was removed. Phones and everything. Building was just empty. It was also partially underground. I had walked into the building before while on post with some other co-workers. It was really spooky. Never went downstairs. Building number was 472. So fast forward a few years later, I'm working as a desk sergeant dispatch for patrol at about 3 in the morning. 911 line goes off. Screen says BLDG 472. I'm like, freak the frick out. My alpha, she freaks the frick out. I pick up the phone. 911, what is the nature of your emergency? Click. We send a patrol out immediately. He's like, F that when we tell him where the call came from. He gets out there. Pitch black. Nothing. No lights, no nothing. He snoops around. Doors all locked, all secured. Don't know to this day how it happened, but 911 calls came out of that building about the same time every few months. The building was demolished and filled in several years back and no calls from the BLDG since. D. I love happy endings. My fiance has a really good one from when he was at West Point, the military academy. So there's a lot of haunted parts of West Point since it's so old, and tons of legends, ghost stories told by the cadets from over the years. It was during the summer, and the place was basically empty. He was on night duty for one of the oldest barracks on the campus. All night long, he kept hearing someone walking around on one of the floors above him, and when he would go up and check it out, this one room would have a light turned on. He kept turning off the light, locking the door, and then would go back down to his desk on the main floor. He said at first, he thought someone was just messing with him, but then it started getting really annoying. So around 2 AM, he gets a phone call from someone, a brigade commander or something. This guy starts screaming at him on the phone, "Cadet, I'm looking at Scott Barracks." Not sure if it was actually Scott, but for the story's sake, it's Scott Barracks right now, and I see a light on the 3rd floor. Go take care of that light. So my fiance, fed up at this point, goes upstairs again, unlocks the room door, and turns off the light again. An hour later, he gets another call. "Cadet, this is Lieutenant Colonel Mayer, and I'm looking at Scott Barracks and that light on the 3rd floor is still on. I want you to go turn it off and then meet me at Thayer Statue to explain why you can't follow basic orders." Thayer Statue was a common meeting point for cadets, so after going up to the 3rd floor one again, my fiance makes his way to the statue to get chewed out by this Lieutenant Colonel and explain that the light kept going on even after he turned it off. At this point he was super creeped out and it was really late, like 3 AM. So he made one of his friends come with him so that they could both explain to this brigade commander what was going on. They get to the statue and wait. No one comes. They keep waiting, because the last thing they want is to get in trouble for not waiting for a lieutenant colonel on top of the light. After an hour, no one came. They decide to leave. The next morning, he decided to tell his company commander what happened with the light, and mentioned that Lieutenant Colonel Mayer had called them and then never showed up to Thayer Statue to talk. The company commander turned pale, looked at my fiance, and asked him if he was sure it was Lieutenant Colonel Mayer who had called. My fiance was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." He yelled at me twice and made me walk to meet him at 3 AM. About it, apparently, a decade earlier, a Lieutenant Colonel Mayer had committed suicide in those barracks in that room on the 3rd floor. So my fiance swears up and down that his ghost had called him that night and had kept turning on the lights in that room. I don't know about spooky, but the most unexplainable thing I can think of is why are we outside the armory at 0530 when we aren't picking up weapons until 0900 and moving to the training area until 1100. In a hurry to wait. Navy here. After lights out, the whole ship turns on red lights instead of white lights. So all the passageways, halls, are dimly illuminated by eerie red light. Being sleep deprived and hearing unexplained noises are common. Can't say one instance, but lots of small WTF was that? Oh, to be fresh on a ship again. Wouldn't go back if I could. I served in the SAF as a combat medic, and was tasked to lead the medical support team for a training course in Brunei. Due to one of my medics falling sick out in the field, I had the privilege of taking his place and spending the night, with an officer and a warrant officer, WO, on a narrow ridgeline in Mt. Bayang, which was apparently a navigation exercise checkpoint for the trainees. As night fell, we were warned by the officer to refrain from sleeping in the middle of the ridgeline as we ran the risk obstructing the path of any wandering spirits. Out of respect, we took the advice and constructed our hammocks as close to the sides of the ridgeline as we dared. Being a light sleeper, I kept being roused by the sound of the occasional heavy footstep walking by, crunching on the dead leaves and sticks on the ground. The footsteps sounded human, but at that point of time at night, nobody was supposed to navigate the mountain in pitch black. The next morning, my auditory experience was validated when all three of us found fresh tracks, too big to belong to any animal, on the ground that appeared in inconsistent intervals. Yo, Brunei here. It's not just ridgelines but doorways as well. Kinda like a local superstition thing. Nothing too amazing, but I used to be a tank commander in the Marines. I was out in the field one night and had a dream that I was driving slowly down a road and had another tank strike mine at a 90-degree angle on my front left armor skirt. The next day, I was slowly leaving an assault lane and my LT's tank was driving blind. He was infamously crappy at his job, at a high rate of speed from the left and struck my tank directly where I dreamed it had. Similarly, I had a predictive dream in high school about my friend flipping his car the night before he actually did. I don't really believe in psychic phenomenon, but my two experiences were pretty weird. It's not really too spooky, but my unit was in New Mexico for training for 2 months at White Sands. We were shooting a night range, and it looked like someone had turned on a decently bright light, and of course everyone got mad because it fricks without NVGS. Well, then there was what sounded like the loudest clap of thunder I've ever heard, and everyone looked up and stopped shooting. A giant meteorite had just passed through the atmosphere and blew up and lit the entire sky up as bright as day. I don't know that it's related to being a police officer so much as my grandma, Gammy, but my first shift back on duty after she passed her funeral, I had a handful of things happen that I couldn't help but think she had a hand in. Dispatched to an expected hospice death of an elderly lady whose time of death was exactly 1 week after Gammy. Dispatched to another call and the subject's birthday was the date of Gammy's death. Ducked into one of my favorite hidey holes for a smoke break and smelled gardenia, one of her favorite scents, immediately upon getting out of my unit. Never smelled it there before, and haven't since. And she died from lung disease despite having never been a smoker herself. Dispatched to a house where the residents came home to an open front door. Residents swear it was closed locked when they left. No signs of forced entry. While clearing the house, I turn a corner and find myself face to face with a china cabinet full of Gammy's patent dessert rose. For those who may be interested, for the first time that night I said a mental "Hey, Gammy" before continuing to clear the house. Nowhere in the house did anything look disturbed. No signs of criminal activity. Nothing stolen. Just an open front door and a cabinet full of dishes only a grandmother would think pretty. Went back outside to retrieve the residents and found out they were the grandkids of the homeowner who had recently passed away. Not gonna lie, I checked 10-8 then found a dark place to park and bawl my eyes out. She was super supportive of my decision to join law enforcement, and I believe that first shift back she took the chance to let me know she was still watching out for me and always would be. I miss that woman daily. First off, I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't even know Gammy, but I love her. She sounds so sweet. She's definitely looking over you. Secondly, thank you for your service. Taking a manual weather observation at night at Gunsanab, Korea. See a meteor explode, not just fizzle out. Go in and check some meteor observing sites. None of them had recorded it. Check back a week later. Still nothing. Not spooky, but I can't explain it. During the last round of mutual frickery between Israel and Gaza, we took hold of a house in a city in the north of the Gaza Strip. One day we see a light grey, nearly white donkey with a foal coming towards us. After a quick discussion with the commanders, it was decided that we should open fire in fear that Hamas might have planted a bomb in the donkey's stomach. So we shoot. Pretty sure we hit it a few times and they both ran away and didn't not return. So far not that weird, right? When we were done in that heck hole and I came back home, I talked to my friend from another unit and casually brought the donkey story up. He said they had the exact same experience, down to the color of the donkey. Checked up with friends from various units. Sure enough, nearly everyone had the same experience, even ones that were much farther away. I work supply in the Air Force, and we have a couple creepy stories about our warehouse that I always thought were just the other guys having fun. So one night I stayed up real late and decided to go sleep at the shop to catch a couple hours of sleep before work. I kept all the lights off and passed out in the office, and about an hour in I start to wake up to all these noises. Sounds like someone's running around the warehouse. So I look out the doorway and don't see anything. And all of a sudden there's a crash in the room next to mine. The chair was spinning and stopped perfectly facing the desk I was at, and all the computer screens turned on. I went outside and smoked till everyone else showed up, lol. Not police or military, but a firefighter I have two that I found creepy. The first was an old church that in the 70s a local business bought. They used it as file storage before the building was condemned for not being livable. We got called for a remote alarm through a security company. A pretty standard call. Anyways, on arrival, we did a 360 walk around. Couldn't see anything but found a few broken windows. So we make entry through the front and just walk around with just flashlights. The dust, decaying rooms and creaking of wood from other teams walking was unsettling. Then the audible alarm sounded. Just about jumped out of our skin. We find the panel shuts it off, and as we turn around 2 cops are standing behind us. One surprise jump and hearty laugh later and we were out having found nothing. The second was smoke in the building at a telecom relay house, where they keep local servers for phone and internet. We were walking around, could smell electronics burning, see hazy smoke, but didn't find a fire. Additionally, the whole building had a very Stranger Things vibe that none of us could shake. Air Force former active duty and current reservist here, was deployed to Incirlikab, Turkey recently back in October 2016. I worked the overnight shift, so on my day off I would typically go to the bowling alley, do laundry late at night. Basically just find things to stay awake as long as I could so I didn't mess up my sleep schedule. Sometimes they would cut power to the entire base around 1-2 am. We never got a warning when it would happen, but everyone was used to it and it would come back up around 5-10 minutes later. One night on my day off, I was out by our tins, basically the crappy trailers that we stay in, where they pack like 8 airmen to a room meant for 2. I think maybe I was trying to call my wife or just outside doing nothing, killing time. All of a sudden the power goes out completely. It's around 2 am. No streetlights, no lights coming from buildings. It is pitch black on the entire base. I figure after 5-10 minutes it would come back. So I'm waiting. After about 5 minutes I hear security forces, military police, vehicles with their sirens racing up and down the streets. Still I'm like, okay, maybe an exercise or coincidence or something. 20 more minutes go by. Still pitch black. A steady flurry of police cars still zooming up and down the streets. My buddy and co-worker comes out of his tin, telling me that a few of his roommates are security forces and their radios were going off with calls, and that they had awoken and thrown on their uniforms and left the room. Keep in mind, this is only a few months after the coup happened, so everyone was on high alert and suspicion, and many of the people there at the time, not me, were present for the coup. So to keep with the story, me and my buddy are standing outside in the pitch black of night. Police cruisers racing up and down the street, and it's now been an hour. We were worried the base may be under attack. Incirlikab is near Adana, Turkey, less than 100 miles from Aleppo and the Syrian border, and ISIS is obviously a big threat. Beyond that, we thought it could be another coup attempt by the Turkish people. So finally, after about 2 hours of standing outside, unable to see anything, power finally comes back. We never got word about why that happened, or why the police cruisers were racing up and down the base. Could have been a power test routine shutdown gone bad. Could have been a coincidence with police cars. Who knows? We never found out what happened or why. Not exactly spooky, but when I was in boot camp I was in Ship 6, name of the barracks. About 3 months after they reopened it. It had been closed for about 5 years prior and was still going through renovations while we were there. Around midnight 0400 weird crap would happen. It was likely the symptom of sleep deprivation, but you'd always hear footsteps, occasionally see something moving outside the porthole on the door to the open bay, and everyone on the second and third decks swore they saw either a recruit or horse walking around up there. Thing is, some dudes did kill himself in that building a couple years before they closed it, or so I've been told. At my current station though, there's a bunch of vampire deer that make it onto base, and last year when I was on nights there was a deer that liked the parking lot outside my building. We have cameras that cover said parking lot, and I once saw that deer looking up at the camera for a minute or two. At first it was spooky to see a deer with fangs look right back at me, but then it got kinda cool and unsettling. Sangin, Afghanistan, 2013. We were on post late at night, and I had thermal attached to my RCO looking south over the green zone, when all of a sudden, a bright white blip faded into the sky. It didn't fly in from anywhere, it just kind of appeared in my thermal. I stopped looking through the scope, and it was a red light just hovering in the sky. I immediately radioed into the cock and asked if we had anything in the AO. And they said no, and my buddy on post with me could see it as well. Post 3 radioed over to us as well, confirming that they had eyes on it. It started moving in an odd triangular pattern, and would just stop and hover, then continue in triangular routines. Then, it just zoomed off, going from static to what seemed like Mach 1 almost instantly, and vanished. None of us could explain it, and it would come back in various locations, randomly throughout our deployment. We only had about 100 guys on the free on board, so word spread pretty quick, and a lot of guys would see it on post throughout the winter. Sometimes we would go out and peek over the walls to get another look at it as it would come back. It was definitely strange, and I'm glad it was a thing that wasn't unique to me only seeing it. Also, there were many times we would see plenty of weird animals, like large cats hanging outside the wall, stalking other animals. Big cats, like mountain lion size. I didn't understand half of this, but it sounds creepy. I work for a security company. We install CCTV on construction sites. One night, about 2 AM, our response officer gets a call from the monitoring station to say there's a guy walking around one of the buildings under construction. They described him as tall, dressed in all black with his hood up, but couldn't see his face because he had his back to the camera. He wasn't stealing or vandalizing, just wandering around, usually homeless looking for shelter. So the response goes to investigate. When he gets there, there's nobody around, so he asks the station to check the camera covering the only way in out of the building to see which direction he went. Nothing. He does a full patrol of the site and there's no trace of anyone. The only other way for this guy to get out was to shimmy down the scaffolding and he could be hurt, so the officer asks the station to do a check on all of the camera footage through the night. Nothing. The next day we ask the station to send over the stills from when they initially picked the intruder up. He's not on any of them. Just footage of our response officer waking around. We were pretty freaked out talking about it in the office, and it was laughed off as the monitoring officer being sleepy and seeing things. Except the cameras we use have IR beams and they only alert the monitoring station when someone breaks them. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.